All right, so we're gonna go over a couple things in Zoom that you can do to help kind of like lock it down a little bit and stop the Zoom bombings if that's been happening, or just make sure that kids are where they're supposed to be at the right times. So you want to have probably a different Zoom link for each period. That's gonna stop kids from coming into like their buddies period when they're supposed to be in a different class. Makes a lot of sense. So I'm gonna go into my homeroom one. I'm just gonna go over here and I'm gonna click edit because hopefully you have made recurring meetings already. And I'm gonna edit all occurrences of that meeting. So if you have a different Zoom link for each period, that's going to help because you'll then close a class and then start the next one. So it's going to help like kick out kids and like help shuffle them where they're supposed to be, kind of like a passing time. So your first thing that you need to have is down here where it says security. Obviously you have your passcode. Make sure waiting room is enabled. This is your best tool for making sure that kids who are not supposed to be there or are being naughty, like this is your first tool. So turn on waiting room and just tell kids they have to be using their real name. And if they come in and they change their name to something that it's not supposed to be, you kick them out. And they then have to change it back and go back in the waiting room. And you only admit from the waiting room if it's their actual name. So if somebody comes in with the name Avocado, you know their name is not Avocado. You kick them out. So waiting room, and then you go down and you make sure to save it. Now let me show you what the waiting room looks like actually on the teacher side of it. Okay, so the waiting room looks something like this. Thank you, Ms. Chavero, for helping me with this. So you've got your waiting room right here. Now if that wasn't the right name, like if she had entered without her actual name, I can go up here to this little message thing and I can just say, because you'll see down here it says to everyone in the waiting room, if you can't see behind the picture, and I can just say, make sure to set your name to your real name, and I can send that, and it's going to show up in the chat. So that went to the waiting room, not to everyone like in the chat. And then I can go in and I can click admit. And if I admit her, it brings her in. Now, if I had more people in the waiting room, I'd have a button up here that says admit all. Be careful with admit all because it does admit everyone in that list that is in there when you click it. So if you went through and you looked and you were like, oh, they look all good, and then a kid sneaks in there last minute right before you hit admit, you've accidentally admitted that kid. So it's a little bit safer to admit one by one. And you can admit one by one, and be like checking them off on your roster, like who was here. And so when you admit, that brings them in. So I'm on my participants tab right here. And so in my participants tab, hello, thank you for joining me. I'm recording. So in my participants tab, I can go over here to more and I can in here put them back into the waiting room if I didn't want her here, or I could go in and I could remove the user. So if students start like not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you can kick them out. So this is like kicking them to the hallway. They changed their name and they shouldn't have, or you can kick them out of the meeting completely. So if you just need to remove them for a little while, then throw them to the waiting room. And then you can bring them back in and throw them into a breakout room with you. Or you can just kick them out if they're being really naughty. So use your waiting room. Now, the last thing, and I'm going to switch screens here again, is going to be what you can do in Canvas to make sure that kids have the right Zoom link so they're getting to this room. And, all right, the last thing I want to show you that's going to help with our Zoom bombing and all the other stuff is going to be on your Canvas calendar, how to create a separate event for each class period. So probably going to want different Zoom links for each class period, or like at least different Zoom links between, like, especially if you have freshmen or sophomores and ones who are being naughty. Remember, you can always change your Zoom link too. So if your Zoom link becomes compromised for whatever reason, you start having Zoom bombs, make a new Zoom link. Just start clean because kids are going to be coming to the calendar anyway. It's not like they're saving your Zoom link anywhere because they're not. So they're going to come to your calendar to find your Zoom links. When I go in here and I make my event and I set it to whatever class and I go into more options. So in here, it's opening. I'm going to give it a title. I can call it whatever. So advisory, and then like I can give it the date or advisory, just whatever. In here, I'm going to give my Zoom link. And then down here, you want to click this use a different date for each section. So you're going to want to set it for this, for that section. And then if you had more than one section, you can then set it, not set this particular one, like this exact information for a period. You just make a different one then for the next period, and you just select that period from down here on this list. So different sections should have different events. And you do that by using this use a different date for each section. So that's super important. Use a different date for each section, because that's how you're going to give the Zoom link information to classes and have them not get all mixed up. And so at the end of each class, you'll end that Zoom session, start your next one. End that one, start your next one. And that way you're just starting fresh each time. It's going to reduce the risk of like kids sharing your Zoom info, all of that. But again, use that waiting room. Use it, use it, use it. Because that is going to be your best defense. One of the things I heard is working well for people is having like actually a paper roster and just checking off names as your attendance as you're bringing them into the Zoom room. You don't have to bring them in quickly. You don't have to. Bring them in slow. It's fine. Just make, because that's going to be more time in the long run. Like you're going to save more because you won't be dealing with them being silly.